Yo, do you got a squeaky heat press? Let me see if I can help you out. What's happening, everybody? Boy Big Brando, and today we're gonna be talking about kind of like heat press maintenance. Somebody hit me up and said, hey, I got a really squeaky heat press. What can I do to fix that? It's getting kind of annoying. So the easy answer is, this is the stuff I use right here, 3-in-1. This right here is what I put on all of my heat presses at every single moving point. Every little joint, every little piece that moves gets a little dot of this right here. So take a screenshot. It's called 3-in-1 oil. This is what I use on my heat presses. Now that that's out of the way, let me tell you what I think happens to the heat presses. If you press t-shirts, hoodies, whatever it is, it produces a lot of lint, a lot of dust, a lot of cotton fibers. Now, it might not seem like it when you're looking at it, but let's say you pressed 100 t-shirts. If you're doing 100 t-shirts back to back on your heat press, chances are the top of your heat press is gonna start to look dusty. And when I say dusty, it's a lot of cotton fibers that are just laying on the top of there, because when we take t-shirts, a lot of times we're flicking them out like this. Every single time you do that, you're creating more dust, more fibers off of this one t-shirt. Shout out to AS Color. This is an AS Color heavy t-shirt right here that I use for the example. But anytime you do this, you're flicking off a ton of cotton, a ton of dust, a ton of particles into the air. It lands on top of the heat press. It starts to land in the joints, and then that starts to create that squeaking noise. So if you're experiencing this, let me show you how I use this stuff right here and where I apply it. All right, here we are. We're gonna be using my Heat Press Nation Signature Series Cap Press for an example. This is the oil that I use. There's no squeak in this right now, only because I kind of maintain my presses as much as possible. Anytime I hear a tiny squeak, I'll usually put this on, but I want to show you exactly where I put this stuff. So when I say in every single joint, I'm talking about every piece that moves. If you take your press and you just maneuver it around and you see what parts are spinning, what parts are moving, that's where I'll put a dot here, 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 and inside of here, I'll put dots. All of those parts right there spin and move. That's usually where dust and stuff could get caught up and then cause that squeak. So all I'll do is just figure out how to put this little nozzle inside of here. Boom, dot there, dot there. You don't need a lot of this stuff. A little goes a long way. Also, you're gonna wanna get an old rag or an old t-shirt to clean up the excess, because there is gonna be some drippage. You're gonna wanna clean that stuff up. So every single piece that you see moving, spinning, any part that actually moves whenever you're using this press is where you're gonna wanna put a dot. So if you just take your press and just move it down slowly, you start to see every little piece spinning, every little piece that has like a joint that moves. That's where you're gonna wanna put the oil. And then you just work the oil in. You're just gonna keep going up and down, working that oil in until the squeak is gone. And if you go slow enough, you'll be able to hear where the squeak's coming from, and then you could pay more attention to those areas. But if you're oiling this thing down, oil up every single joint. That way, everything has been touched and greased down. Now, I already know there's gonna be people like, well, I don't have a hat press. Show me what it looks like on an actual heat press. Here's my Signature Pro heat press. This is the 15x15 by HPN by Heat Press Nation. Same exact thing. You're gonna bring this thing down. Every single piece that moves, you'll see it. There's joints here, there's joints there, here, 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 inside and out, back here. That's where you're gonna wanna put the oil. And like I said, one drop only. So here, I would just go boom, 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 bring it up, boom, 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 work it in, up and down, up and down. Same thing back here, boom, 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 and only need a drop. Then I would take my t-shirt or my rag and clean up the excess so you don't have just oil dripping all over your press. I don't know if this is how you properly maintain these presses, but that's how I maintain my press. Especially when this thing's popping up crazy, you wanna make sure that everything is oiled down so that way Nothing's gonna interrupt it. You don't want that to start to seize up where the press doesn't even pop up because the squeak gets so bad and you don't know what's caked up inside of there. So I try to use that to make sure everything's good. I also try to keep the presses clean by wiping them down with a t-shirt or a rag to eliminate a lot of that dust and all those cotton fibers. So if you were planning on doing this, or if your press is squeaking, it doesn't matter what press you use, do this. Get you a little bit of that 3-in-1, start to work your press down just like this so you get familiar with all the moving pieces, and then that way you'll know exactly where to put the dots. So in this area right here, you see this part moving, I would put a dot here, inside and out, inside and out. Same thing down here, inside and out, inside and out. Here on the main joints, obviously, and then back here on that hinge. That way, every single moving piece will get a little bit of lubrication and you'll be able to free spin it and you'll eliminate all the squeaks in your press. All right, hopefully this helps somebody out. This is what it's called, 3-in-1 oil. You could buy this on Amazon, you could buy it at Home Depot, Target, Walmart, Lowe's, they all got it. But this is what it is right here, 3-in-1 oil. That's what I use on my heat presses. I don't know if this is recommended by the manufacturer, but once I started to hear a little bit of a squeak, I bought this stuff and it took the squeak away. But what I did notice is if you don't constantly clean up your press, like if you're pressing a ton of shirts, in this space that I'm in, we have 6 heat presses and we're pressing hundreds and hundreds of shirts every single day. So it creates a ton of that dust, and that dust is just cotton fibers, particles from the t-shirt, lint from the t-shirt. That's all it is. You'll start to see it all over the place, on top of your presses, on your work tables, everywhere. Always clean up as you go, and that way you'll maintain your machine a little bit better. Sometimes we get a little lazy and we don't clean up, and I get it, we do it also. And once you start to hear that squeak, know that you have a lot of those cotton fibers and that lint built up in those moving joints. And then you're gonna have to take some oil, lube that thing down, and you'll be good to go, all right? Now, there's gonna be a ton of scientists in the comments like, no, you shouldn't be using that. You should be using synthetic oils, or you should be using this kind of lubricant and blah, blah, blah. You use whatever you wanna use. For myself, this 3-in-1 has worked for myself. If you wanted to get the spray version, or you wanted to use some other kind of lubricant that you feel is better for your heat press, by all means, go for it. This is what I've been using. It wasn't recommended by nobody. It's just what I found to work on my heat presses. So that's what I use. You don't have to use this same stuff. You could find any other type of lubrication, oil, whatever you wanted to use for your heat presses. And if you have other recommendations, put it in the comments and try to help somebody else out. But for like the last 15 to 20 years of heat pressing, this is the stuff I've been using, all right? So once again, you can find it on Amazon, Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever you shop. Chances are they have some type of lubrication just like this one. This one's called 3-in-1, and that's the oil I choose to use to lube up all of my heat presses, all right? If you want to check out any of these heat presses, the link is there for you in the description box. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comments for me, or you can follow me on Instagram at BigBrandoTV. Catch you guys on the next one, man. Yeah.